first of all, it involved another Google document where Casper and I started working together on just like the actual prose narrative that we were going to include in this thing. And this I really credit him for. He was very clear that if we were going to do it ourselves, quote unquote, for a popular audience, that it was very important that it be designed, first of all, which you saw that it was, and that it be something that we could distribute in a tactile way, that people could actually hold it in their hands. And that, to Dan's point, of course, requires budget, and it requires a designer. At least in our case, we didn't have those skills. So we were still students. We didn't have money or those contacts. So I think, I'm trying to remember, we may have literally put out a call on Facebook for a designer, and it ended up being the roommate of one of our fellow students at HDS, whose name is Kate Sullivan, who was working, you know, we were helped, I guess, by the fact that we were a little bit older. So we were like, you know, I didn't start divinity school until I was 28. And so there were, you know, Kate, yeah, she was like Sarah's roommate, but she was also like working professionally at a design firm, right? So, but she ended up, you know, she said yes to the project. Of course, we had to pay her. So I think it was, we may have each pitched in like a small amount of our own cash, but we got the biggest check. I think the check that actually allowed us to do the project was from a little family foundation called the Crestwood Foundation, which was just a relationship that I had. It's not my family, but interestingly, the president of that foundation is someone who had worked for many years in the world of interfaith and higher education. And he had seen us go to the Pluralism Project and be turned down. And I think he had a little bit of a, he had a sense of like, I want to see what these guys have to offer kind of thing. So it was through, I guess, the principle behind that is basically it was through relationships that we found a designer and that we found some money. And since that time, we have continued to have to find relationships and money for our work, which is a whole other conversation, but those things don't go away. And then it was a lot of late nights. We did this on the side. We didn't get course credit for it or anything. So this was all happening like in between our classes and other obligations. And, you know, I remember my dear friend Ella, who lives in New York, I was staying with her for a weekend, and that was like the weekend when I owed a draft to Casper, and I just remember staying up all night on her couch. And so she credits her couch as having like some kind of important story. And then we went back and forth in comments in that Google Doc, and we went through multiple iterations with Kate. The first time she made the logo of How We Gather, I really didn't like it. Like, it was kind of like a graffiti font. It looked like one of those 80s Dare commercials. I don't know, this is like, it was not what I wanted. You know, so it's that kind of back and forth. It took, every time we've written a report, it's taken probably 3-4 iterations back and forth with the designer. And then we had to source photos from all of the communities for the case studies and get their permission to use imagery from each of their communities. You know, we had our whole bibliography. So we went through and we were just students, so we didn't have much by way of access to like editorial stuff, but I knew somebody who was a retired editor, and she agreed to do at least like a solid proofreading of it. Once it garnered some attention, we had people come back to us and point out typos and stuff. So then we would change the PDF. Because again, it was pretty raw. Like, this was just like, we just didn't know any better. Our later reports have had more serious like editing and revision processes. But yeah, we got Bobby to edit it for us and did a couple rounds of that. I think we asked a couple other people close to us to just give it a read and let us know of any obvious glaring things. But I think part of what made it good was also that it was so raw. It was like, this is exactly what we have to say, you know, and we kind of didn't know any better. But yeah, we got it printed at the Emerson College print shop down in Boston. It was, the first version of it was really ugly. Like the paper they used was really shiny and it didn't close properly. And so we had to do a second run of it. And then we just sat, this is not, shouldn't be part of the story, but we basically were like squatting in office space at Harvard because we were still students. So we didn't have any like space to be together, but we would kind of sneak up to the fourth floor of one of the buildings and work together. So we just brought all of our giant envelopes and postage and, and just had like mailing parties where we would we wrote personal notes to every person that we sent the first 300 copies to. So we would write the personal notes, we'd stick it in the thing, we had to get all their mailing addresses. And it was just a combination of people we knew and people we wanted to know that we thought might be sort of influencers in the space that we wanted to be working in. So there was sort of audacious part of it, of just being like, why not? What do we have to lose?